Tiger by William Blake. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire? And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? What the hammer, what the chain? In what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what dread grasp dare deadly terrors clasp? When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry?
Hi, I'm Corrin. This podcast is called The Ache, an ode to the existential ache of being human, that still small-voiced hugging inside every single one of us, prompting us to change, move, grow, become more of our authentic selves. This is conversations with people who dance with the ache.
So I love that poem because my mother would read it to me when I was a young boy, and it stuck with me, and I memorized it at one point, but I had to read it from a page today.
I love it. I love that poem so much.
Me too.
Thank you.
It's a good one.
What does it mean to you? Like, is there something that you take from it? I'm sure there's 1,000 things you take from it.
The thing that I take from it is just like that when you bear witness to something that's beautiful and terrifying, like a big cat that was made to eat and prowl, you just step back and think, how could such a beautiful thing be so terrible? And how could something have to die to sustain this like furious thing? It really is just like, I see the tiger in my mind, and I see just like a ball of energy. And it's the kind of thing that I just think like, it's like a house on fire. It's something that can't be stopped. You're just like, okay, there it goes. It's this thing that was, you know, it just kind of came out of the jungle and has always been this thing. This identity, this jungle identity. I think about that poem so often. I think about that poem, just like the image of the tiger peering out and just like locking eyes with this ball of furious thing, you know?
So good, and even your description is so poetic, this furious thing.
Oh, thank you, darling. I appreciate that.
That is the voice of Peter Colombo. Pete is a good friend of mine. Funny though, we've never met in person. I've been internet friends with him for many years, and he's worked on several projects with me, making beautiful, beautiful music, and including the music that you are hearing on this podcast, which is his work. He's an incredible musician, very gifted artist, both visually and sonically. And he's also a very deep thinker, which is how we really bonded. I think we were able to have these beautiful conversations. And even though we've never met in person, he's a big part of my life. Here's our conversation.
It's the funniest thing because I've done like internet radio or like internet sort of audio content for over a decade now, independently and like with groups of people. And, you know, whether it's like internet radio as a DJ or DJing for someone's like talk radio show or doing something that's like, you know, musically related or, you know, doing like live streams or whatever. It's been years and years of that, but I've actually never like sat down and talked to somebody on a podcast.
I'm so honored.
Oh, trust me, I'm the one who's honored, because it's the kind of thing where it's like the musician is often kind of just like the silent. It can be a very passive role because it can just kind of be the kind of thing where it's performative and, you know, people are sitting on a stage and watching you, but it's not like the level of relatability is still very limited, because it's not like the musician is like, well, this is how I feel now that I'm playing this, or, you know, the music speaks for itself to a degree until it doesn't, you know what I mean? It is really, it's a fascinating interplay, because music is so subjective and it's nonverbal. It's really like, a lot of music is nonverbal, obviously. There's lyrical music, and like, you know, melodies have their own implications emotionally, but it's the kind of thing where so much of it is left to the listener, but the player is the first listener. So it's this funny thing where it's like, you know, the player is just kind of relaying what they heard. It's like this funny process of storytelling, except you're the one who made up the story, you know? Like, it's fascinating. It's a fascinating interplay, because it's like, you know, someone can feel really like joyous based on something you played, or you can feel like total sorrow. Like, it really is this funny emotional wash sometimes. You know, I don't know.
Because you could have a completely different experience to then the person next to you, you know, like,
correct.
I can hear a track and be like, I'm experiencing this as, you know, this emotion, whereas you as the player or someone else next to me might be like experiencing something completely different.
Right. And as a result, it's like, it's so tied to identity, because, you know, like the first time you feel a feeling, it like, you know, I think if it's a strong enough emotion, it kind of takes you back to that moment when you're a kid, like the first time you're in love, or the first time you're like disappointed by somebody. It's this thing that, like, I don't know, when someone hears music, it really gets embedded into who they are. And some people really strongly identify with the music that they listen to on a personal level, whereas some people, it's just like, you know, music is a result of things happening. I think this kind of, I didn't necessarily come into this with the podcast with anything in particular in mind, but something I've been thinking about in general is just like levels of understanding to anything, to art, or to you know, film or anything, but like with music in particular, because sound is just it's like a side effect of things happening. You know, like,
oh my God,
like air movement generates sound. So it's the kind of thing where like light is captured on film, but like sound is just like a side effect of a thing. And like, you have to point your camera at a thing in order to capture it, whereas sound is just like a constant thing. So if you go,
oh my God, I've never thought about that.
like sound is just air moving, and all these recordings is just like, is just like that data being captured. Like, obviously the transmissible experience of listening is not data per se, and like the thing happening is not data until we perceive it that way, but like all recorded sound is just like air moving at a place and time.
You're blowing my mind right now.
Well, this is the thing, is like at a certain point you can't really switch it off, and like you kind of cross over into tinfoil hat territory where you're like, there's data in the air. Like, you know, it's complicated.
Oh my God.
It's a complicated relationship.
No, I love that. And it's something that I love about you, is that you notice the relationship between things so much. You are an observer, you're a noticer, you're someone that's pondering, thinking, taking. That's why I wanted you to come on, obviously, and it's why I like working with you and creating with you, because you're someone that you're bringing so much depth to everything you do. And so much of that depth, I think, is because you are someone that is such a keen observer and such a keen listener. And so, of course, you would be coming on with that observation and speaking about that off jump, because you're, you know, that is what you're always thinking about, the deeper thing behind something. And that, like, I have one thought actually, as you were saying that, and I was thinking about you, and I was thinking about my recent observation of you, knowing you, us sharing music, you making music for some things that I've created. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, the Fig short,
of course,
versus the Van Helsing's Dracula promo video, and you made the music and the sound for both of those pieces. Mm-hmm. And they are vastly different. I mean, they both have your signature, but they're vastly different. And that brings me to like my observation about you, which is the type of music, you know, you've shared folders of music with me, you know, for DJing purposes, for like listening purposes. Mm-hmm. And one thing I've noticed is this this extreme, and I've reflected this to you and we've sort of talked about it, but I'm interested to talk about it if you're open to it.
Please.
This sort of extremities that you go to with your taste and with what you do, because that sort of like, I don't know what to call it, but the like noisy sort of grating club sound, or like that, even kind of what we did in the dissonance of the Fig short, and this like intense, like stabby sound that you will create that's elicits such a like strong reaction. And then on the other hand, you do these like what people are hearing right now behind the podcast. You do this like trance like emotion. I don't know what to call it, because it's not trance as in the genre, but
sure,
entrancing, meditative, slow. Like you have so many different styles that you do. But I notice that when you do something, it seems to me as an outsider, you commit so hard to it and you go to like the extreme version of it in a way. I don't know if you have a relationship with that at all.
Well, I think it's all connected. I mean, it's not that I even really have to think terribly hard to come to that conclusion, because it's like you can't really have intense sort of visceral experiences as reactions to harsh noise without the contrast of softness and without the contrast of like these sounds that exist as sort of like comfort sounds, you know, like the idea that I think a lot of it is also informed by the fact that my first instrument was piano. So for me, like it was very much this instrument that's super, super responsive and has a lot of dynamic range, even though all you're doing is effectively pressing buttons. Now, I don't mean to say that to like to minimize the amount of effort it takes to play piano well, but what I mean by that is, compared to things like fretted instruments, compared to woodwind instruments, piano relies on technique for dynamics, for loudness, whereas so many instruments rely on technique just to get a sound out. So like I didn't have to become an expert like trumpet player, you know, like to be a trumpet player, pardon me, to be a good trumpet player, you have to have intense control over your face and mouth in order to even produce a sound out of the instrument. Whereas a piano, it's like the notes are just laid out before you, and the tactile control is really where you express yourself. So understanding just the dynamic range of a piano, which can provide like unbelievable rich harmony, but also is at its key a percussive instrument. You know, these hammers activating the strings are effectively like, it's like a little drum set kind of thing. The piano it's a fascinating instrument just because you have all the harmony laid out in front of you and the shapes are all just laid out in front of you, but the nuance is everything. It's not necessarily that technique will prevent you from getting a sound, but technique is the difference between a good and a great pianist kind of thing. So that's kind of where I started, and then I got into synthesizers as like a teenager in my 20s, just because through sort of computer music and all these things, and eventually when I had enough money, I got to invest in analog gear and making music with much sort of a full circle, like back to the tactile thing of the piano, like being able to turn two knobs at once is not something you could easily do on a computer. So I think for me, to sort of get back to what the original question was, I'm sorry for rambling. Please
ramble. That's what this podcast is all about.
Fair point. To get back to the original question, I think a lot of the emotional associations with sound come from our experiences with them, and some of them are also just sort of baked into being a person. Like I think we associate percussive sounds with sort of needing to sharpen up and pay attention, whereas like these sort of longer sounds allow you to sort of unwind and breathe out slowly and relax, because of, you know, like survival instinct and all these things that are sort of baked into the DNA of being a person. But, you know, if you grew up listening to sort of techno like I did, it's the kind of thing where percussive tracks, even if they're sort of soft natured, like even if someone is playing a piano percussively, I tend to assign rhythm to it. Another sort of human tendency is, I forget the name of the psychological phenomenon, but there's this thing where if you hear like a loop of a phrase or the loop of a you know, like a repeated pattern enough, you start to assign sort of percussive values to it. Like if I were to say, I forget what the exact phrase from the study is, so forgive me for paraphrasing on a paraphrase here, but it's like, if I were to say, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Like, as you hear a piece of recorded material over and over, you begin to fill in rhythmic gaps. It's just like a thing that humans do. So I think that between being pre-programmed for rhythm and the fact that the human experience is so dynamic and humans are so easily, I don't want to say manipulated, but humans are so easily influenced by sound because of things like survival instinct, I think it's easy for me to commit to whatever sound I'm making, because I just see it as part of the continuum of being a person. And it's not so much like, for me, it's not the conscious decision, like I wake up and I'm going to make a drum machine song, or I'm going to make a song that like has these intense, noisy harmonics or anything like that. My bed is 3 feet from my desk. I just roll out of bed and I go, okay, like time to turn it on and like begin making something. Like it's never as much a conscious thing as much as it is like, which piece of humanity am I plucking from my brain at a given moment? Which is a cool and also kind of terrifying place to be creatively,
I mean, it sounds amazing. And I think I love, like, we've talked about your practice with like how often you make pieces and how often you just write and play and improvise. And I think there's an immediacy to that, especially with music versus like maybe what I do with writing a screenplay that then becomes a film. It's such a longer process to have something that's like, I'm going to put complete in quotations because is it ever? But it's like to put something down, you're playing it, it's coming out of you, and it's an immediate expression is so fucking cool. Like the fact that you do that all the time is so fucking cool.
Well, it's a tremendous luxury as well. Like I'm learning now to be able to budget my energy more effectively now that I am sort of in the process of locking down a creative job. But the fact of the matter is, not everybody has room in their life to sit down and like play piano. And as adults, it's very sad because it's like, I have a lot of adult friends who would love to learn music, but it's like beginning to learn a language as an adult is not easy either, because you have like a fully baked life. People have priorities, and like you need to, to sit down and overcome a learning curve that's not necessarily easy to overcome is not rewarding immediately. So people will just go like, oh yeah, I played piano for a month or two and it wasn't rewarding, so I stopped. And that shit breaks my heart, because it's like, if you really want to prioritize it, you would sit down and do it often enough that it enriches your life. And you can only stand to have your life enriched if you're persistent,
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh, I love that. Oh my God.
I mean, it's like the old dad joke that's like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? It's like you practice.
Yeah. But is the goal to get to Carnegie Hall? Not really, because the goal is to experience a feeling. Because even the thing with Carnegie Hall is like, that's just a feeling that you're experiencing. It's not even about the hall. It's about sitting there and having that experience in your body, right?
Well, if you want to get into the meat of why we play.
Of course I do.
Oh, man. I think it's tough. Okay. All right. I want
to talk about you. I don't care about like people, human beings in general. I want to know your experience.
This is just how I feel. This is just me giving you hot takes at this point. I think
hot takes.
Maybe lukewarm takes at best. I'm not a controversial person, as you know. But
whatever kind of take you want to lay down is
fine. It can be agreed upon that we live in 2025 in an era where content is on full display at all times. And I think it's a complicated thing to separate art from commerce and the product of art versus the practice of the artist, which is like, to be a creative person, you need to commit to the working life. Like, it's a fucking life defined by work. That's the way it is. If you don't do the work alone in your room, then you're not going to do it for somebody else. Like, the fact is, I think it's complicated because people will put their life's work on display and be like, oh yeah, this is what I'm working on, and like immediately just commodify something that they love. It's a complicated thing because people are so quick to turn someone's dream into a product, and it really is, I sit down and practice every day because I believe all of this shit is extensions of expressions of play. All this stuff's supposed to be fun. People used to paint for fun, not just to sell the painting.
Yes.
People used to go and pick strawberries for fun, not because they were like eager to put them in a basket and flip the strawberry. It's really just like it is. I don't know. Maybe you can blame it on like a bad monoculture and Facebook and all these like things that are beyond our control. Or maybe you can like say that we actually have control to like change the paradigm and say like,
absolutely, we do. Because look at what you're doing. Like you're doing that. You're having fun and you're making shit. And I think you and I both know a lot of people and making shit. And when I say making shit, I don't mean making content, which you're also doing, but making something because you want to.
Correct.
And you're enjoying the experience. I mean, it's why I'm doing this podcast. I'm just doing this because I'm like, this isn't making me a dime. I'm just having the best fucking time.
Correct.
Getting to talk to my friends.
Well, this is the thing of it all. It's like, do you do it because you love it, or do you do it because you want to monopolize on something? And for me, like, I am one of the least business-minded creative people that anyone may ever meet.
Oh!
My liquid assets are in synthesizers, so I haven't made the best choices. So do as I say, not as I do.
Well, who the fuck cares? Like, who knows what's gonna happen like in the future?
Well, sure.
But
the point being,
you're enjoying a certain aspect of your life.
The point being, a businessman would look at me and be like, he's a fool. But a creative person who knows what it means to commit to making is like, oh, he's invested in hammers and nails. He's going to be making shit forever, which is exactly the goal.
Exactly. And now I'm thinking of day after day, alone on the hill, the man with the foolish granite.
It's a complicated working relationship to just be a creative person and not feel like you have a ton of choice in the matter, because like I said, I've kind of reached the tinfoil hat stage where I'm just like, there's sound happening all the time. Like, get out the recorder to collect the crucial data that solicits an emotion, because it's just like, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
I love that. And it's why it's one reason I love you and why I love working with you, and because of the joy that you find in your artistic practice and like in capturing sound and like experiencing sound. And
of course,
it's a beautiful thing. Can we talk about you as a soft soul in this world? Can we talk about the aching soft soul of Pete?
I mean, I guess if you insist. What's on your mind, Corrin?
I don't insist. We don't have to, but
we absolutely may. We may.
I think that you and I have talked many times about masculinity in today's society and the complexities around, that as a concept, because obviously it's a very vast and multifaceted and multi-tiered thing, with so many branches. Like we could talk about it for 10 hours and still not get to the point's not to get to a conclusion, is it? Just to pontificate, but
of course,
philosophize. But yeah, we've talked about that, I think, amongst ourselves, and like the relationship that you have with being, are you still there? Did I lose you?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Good. No, you're good. I've never met you in person, which is funny to say. And because I was just about to start describing you physically, and then I was like, I actually have never been in your physical presence because we've been internet friends for 4 years.
It's true.
But I know that you're a tall individual, and you are a physical presence, right?
Yeah, I'm 6 foot flat. I'm like a broad-shouldered man. Yeah. I'm covered in tattoos. It's a thing. You're
covered in tattoos. You're like the, tall, dark, and brooding, handsome type, and is this like masculine presence. But you have, as many people do, this like very kind and sensitive soul. And I know it's been like a point of you know, it's been both a beautiful point and a pain point in your life at different moments because of different, you know, circumstances. But yeah, I was wondering if you would just speak to your experience with that a little bit.
Well, it's a funny thing because, like you said, it's like I'm like a tall guy, and my nature is very like gentle and accommodating. So one of the things that I've done in the past for work is handle fine artwork. So that profession alone has its own sort of set of implications. But being someone who's like kind of tall and broad-shouldered in a setting where it's like a gallery setting or someone's home where they're like hanging an expensive painting, and they kind of expect you just by look alone to sort of be a kind of a grunt or whatever, and then they go, hey, can you put this over there? And you go, oh yes, of course, no problem. Like that for me, like that is my personality, is very much like, oh, can I get you like a glass of cold water? Like that's is like accommodating and just trying to make everything copacetic, not for the sake of just like smoothing things over and you know, as a trauma response kind of thing, as much as it is just like, if I can help make people feel comfortable, like why would I not? Why not be accommodating? It doesn't chap my ass at all to be kind to anybody. It doesn't deplete me at all to be like, to ask somebody like, how's your day? You know, like I will start a conversation with the person like bagging my groceries, because also another thing, for context, I live in Miami, Florida. People in Miami have really bad boundaries. They'll be like, hey, like, do you speak Spanish? And if you say yes, they'll be like, hey, I need a huge favor. So it's the kind of thing where if someone is like a little nice to you, or you go like, hey, like, how's your day going? They'll be like, oh my God, I'm having the worst day. So it's so funny how the veil is very thin between, like, not just between people, but between like whether or not to accept like social norms on a moment to moment basis, or to like drop the veil, you know? So for me, like the masculinity thing is kind of linked to the identity thing, because for me, it's just like, okay, like I know I'm a man. I know I feel comfortable being a man. Like I'm one of the few people in my generation who's like, doesn't feel like I've had to cope with my identity being a man, which like I feel comfortable in my skin. I love women. I'm fully, you know, I feel like a boring straight man through and through, but I do have this very soft side where it's like, you know, I love Joan Baez. I love Joni Mitchell. I love like kind of sad, sappy guitar music. I think it's a part, because I think it all boils down to me just being an active listener and understanding that by keeping my ears open, there is a broad spectrum of humanity that I'm blind to. And a big part of my experience in terms of like what I don't know about being a person is like, I don't know what it's like to be a woman, but I am aware of the feminine experience on a level that is just like, you know, I'm as keen a listener as a person can be. I love to learn. You really are. I love to learn about women. I love talking to women. So the fact is, it's like, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's that separate from my experience as a person. Like I don't feel like, okay, well, I'm a man, so my understanding stops here. It's like, no, like learn as much as you can, listen as much as you can. So that's kind of been my experience. But you know, it's mostly just like, I think the soft man thing can be a detriment depending on people's preconceived notions and just being like, oh, like maybe he's like queer coded, or maybe it's one thing or another. And I'm just like, no, I just like feel comfortable being gentle and being a man. Like, I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive, or at least shouldn't be, you know? It's the kind of thing where, yeah, I don't feel ashamed to be soft. Like, I don't feel like I stand to lose anything by being kind to anybody, which is, again, kind of a weird and terrifying position to be in, but it's like, it's not something I have to think too hard about. It's just kind of baked in.
Why does it feel terrifying?
Because
at moments.
Because I know that the world is cruel, and I know that people take advantage of people with who are willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. You know?
Yeah.
And sometimes giving someone the benefit of the doubt once is all it takes for them to take advantage of you. So it's the kind of thing where I have to be very wary of my boundaries in terms of how much energy I share with people, because it's not, for me, like the quid pro quo thing, like I give you something, you give me something, is like not really how I even think. Again, poorly business minded, but it's the kind of thing where it's like, if I have something to share, I'll share it. Like, you know, when you said that you need music for the podcast, I was like, yeah, like I have that, of course. Of course I can share that. Of course. Even though it's something I made and it's something that like, you know, you didn't make yet. I'm like, oh, great, we're making something together. Like, we're sharing. The sharing thing is key. And I think like that is kind of a boundary point in terms of where my masculinity falls on like a practical basis. Like on a moment to moment basis, it's like, oh, if you need that and I have it, like I'll share it. Like if it doesn't kill me to share, I'll share it. You know?
I love that. And that feels like beyond gender, like into like just the idea of like masculine energy. What is that? Oh, a providing type of energy, or an energy that like creates a container, an energy that, you know, is forward moving. And the concept of sharing or like providing in that way feels very masculine energy to me.
It can be, I think, but it isn't necessarily always functionally providing as much as like emotional availability, because that's the thing, is like emotional availability in addition to providing can be kind of a mixed bag. That's where you start to get into like, oh, like this dude, like most men aren't great listeners. It's a sad fact. It's a sad fact. Most men aren't super great listeners, and also most men don't really check in with themselves. Like one thing that I really try to do is just dig deep and really understand, like, okay, like these are the things I want from myself, you know, these are the ways that I'm falling short, and understanding like, okay, so perfect example right now, I'm looking at a whiteboard, and on a sticky note on the whiteboard, I just have a list of things that I have, like, that I identify with, like I am and it's a list, and I'll read you the list. The first thing is, I am a conjurer, I am a seer, I am a planner, a printer, a mystic, a designer, and I have, last one is underlined, I am a prism.
Ooh, I am a prism?
I just feel like I do what I can to reflect the world in a way that is perhaps a shinier, or perhaps like on the nicer edge of the absolute truth, you know?
Ooh, like reflecting and amplifying the beauty, or like the beautiful things that you see in the world in a way.
Correct.
Is it like that?
And if I can't be a prism, at the least I could do is be a mirror, you know? So that's where I'm at.
Oh,
purple prose aside,
I love that.
You know, it's very much like, I think a lot of men don't dig deep into the identity thing. They're just like, well, I'm the sum of the things I like, and I am a name and a job and a salary, and this is what I do day to day, and like, I don't really think about my dreams, you know, which is a fucking shame. And some people are like, I think about my dreams and then I make furniture. I make furniture for myself, and like, that's the, you know, like, I think the male scope of vision can be very limited. So depending on the level that like we check in with ourselves on, and also the level that like we're just willing to learn about the human experience, instead of just being like, I'm going to be a carpenter forever, which isn't to shit on carpenters. Right. Like, I love the idea of woodwork.
My dad's a carpenter.
Yeah, committing to woodwork.
But it's his vibe. He loves it. He loves it.
Committing to woodwork is one of the like oldest human traditions ever, and it's tremendously noble. But the fact of the matter is, it's like, it really limits the human experience down to pushing and shaping wood.
It's so interesting that you bring that up, because now of course I'm thinking about my father. I'm thinking about like the masculine experience. I'm thinking about my experience with the masculine, with men.
Tell me.
And I think because of the father that I grew up with, I had a very different idea of what masculinity was, because my father is an artist through and through.
Right. My
father is a listener through and through. My father is extremely present. Mm-hmm. My father, out of my two parents, not that my mom isn't present, my mom is just much more intellectual.
Okay.
She's much more like in her head.
Sure.
She's much more like prone to just like being in the other room reading or thinking about something. She's definitely loves to talk and process. But my father is the one out of my two parents, I think, that I, as a child, had like a lot more emotional, exploratory experiences in conversation with.
Interesting.
And artistic. Well, my mom too. But my dad showed me art. You know, my dad like loves the great artists. Like he he recently went on a trip to Italy that was all just about going and seeing different pieces that he wanted to see, that he's never seen in person.
Amazing.
And, you know, he just like knew all these stories about artists and knew all these stories about like, you know, the greats and like different, how their career went, or like how their artistic life was.
Wow.
And no career, you know, dying poor, whatever. And he makes so many different things. Like he was a sculpting when I was young, as well as, I mean, he's a carpenter. He does interior.
What kind of sculpture?
He was doing like a lot of like cups and bowls and like that kind of stuff, like practical stuff. But he would also make little sculptures, like little fun ones too.
Amazing.
But he, like, his artistic expression is woodwork. So it's so funny you bring it up, because his day job is home remodels and like carpentry in that way.
Sure.
Like very practical. But his like heart is these like furniture pieces that he makes out of these old doors that he bought from this old hotel that was closing down and had all these antique doors. And he makes these like original furniture pieces out of them. He made our banister. He built the house I grew up in.
Amazing.
He made the banister of our home. This huge long banister was made out of these doors, and there's like hinge holes in it throughout. Like, I don't know. He just like does these things. And so anyway, to circle back to the beginning, I am not trying to be a contrarian of what you said about woodworking, because I know what you meant.
Please.
I know what you meant, and I agree. However, it made me, of course, think about my father. You remind me of my dad in certain ways, and I think there's a lot of men in my life, my partner being one of them. I have like a few other male friends that really remind me of my dad, because they're truly like a very masculine presence. And then like my dad, who's like strong, like woodworker, you know, that's the vibe. But inside, he's such a like, you know, bleeding heart in a way, and like really a feeler. And like that is what I perceived men as when I was young, because that was my masculine figure. So I've always like, I went out into the world assuming that like that was the case for most men, you know?
Interesting points of awakening, I'm sure. Good God.
Oh my God. I was like, what? Like facing like my first boyfriends and stuff, and just being like, what do you mean you don't know your feelings? You don't know why you're feeling that? What do you mean? Like, what are you saying to me? Anyway, I went on a crazy tangent about my dad, but just the point of like moving through the world and having these expressions, like I learned that from my dad. Like my dad, maybe too much, I learned from my parents the concept of like starving artists. You know, my parents are like very into art as a pure form. And so I needed to learn that it was okay to have commerce with my art, you know?
Yes, these fucking learning curves. Oh my God. Ain't it the truth? Well, it's refreshing to know that your father is a woodworker and has such a broad scope of vision, because I chose it just sort of as a placeholder.
I know exactly what you mean though, which is like you learn a trade that's profitable, that you can monetize, that you can do, that's very physical. And you do that. And sometimes I do think it is like an escape from the mind in a way that can be detrimental to people, and specifically men, in those types of you know, careers where maybe they just never have time and space to explore the mind and like their emotions. Yeah, man. I think about woodworking constantly, but it's not necessarily, you know, I chose it as a placeholder. I think it's more just like I chose it as a placeholder for like a tactile vocation. But woodworking in and of itself, I mean, there is endless opportunity in wood. It's just like the kind of thing that I find to be so fascinating because of how sort of like arcane it is. You know, it's like the kind of I think about the first time someone chopped down a tree. I'm just like, so let's go.
Anytime I think about like connective tissue as far as like human consciousness and like why things are the way they are in the zeitgeist or anything like that, like I try to think about the first time someone did something. I try to think about like the first time someone like ran water through dried and ground coffee beans. Like, what a fucking maniac.
Like, how did they think to do that?
It is like such a high level. Maybe it happened over hundreds of years. I can't say it was one guy, but I try to think about the first time that someone like had the eureka moment and was really just like, okay, we're on to something here. Whether it's like the first time someone like mixed pigment with oil and like came up with oil paint, like all these things that like change history.
Yeah. And I feel like, okay, I'm going for, I don't know if it's a spicy take or not. It's not.
Go for
I think
it.
it's just
Swing
the
for the fences.
next natural thought, which is, do you feel like we've lost some of that with like how online we are and how everyone's trying to get 10 reviews before they try something, or like ask 20 quote unquote experts before they like open Ableton? They're like, let me watch 100 YouTube videos, or like,
Yes.
I can't even like try these things. Like, I do feel like we have too much. Maybe we're not bored enough. I don't know, to be like,
I would love for
trying
you
crazy
to
new
expand
things.
on that, but I think it also kind of boils down to like the art versus commerce thing, like the content loop of it all. Like, if you're gonna start a restaurant because you think like, I'm gonna start a restaurant and build a menu because I love food, like that person's gonna have a harder time than someone who's like, I'm gonna open a burger restaurant and have a burger that's like 4 patties and people are gonna take photos of it and it's gonna get me what I want, what do you think you want in the moment.
But why do you think that person's going to have a harder time?
I think that person's
Why
gonna
do you
have,
think the first person has a harder time?
I think that person's gonna have a harder time because I think that the algorithms that dictate how many people get eyes on you on the internet don't necessarily follow the human intuition that comes from appreciating
Right.
creativity.
But if we're saying the goal is to, because you're doing it because you enjoy food, then it doesn't fucking matter.
Well, this is the thing. If you enjoy food but you know that nothing is free, and if you buy a case of fish from Spain and they're the best fucking fish you've ever seen in your life, and you sell them for what it costs to make them, but you're only ever sort of like breaking even, then you don't feel like there's forward motion. Then your passion becomes another stagnant stone for you to try to get the ball rolling on, or whatever. Like,
so we're talking about capitalism. We're talking about, money, the monetary system at this point then.
Unfortunately, we all have
everything exists under that.
Unfortunately, fucking everything costs money, and like expression of dreams are always going to cost money on a practical level. It's always gonna, even if it's like you're buying your first easel and tube of paint, like even if you're not great at painting, to commit to buying the thing is a commitment, and not a lot of people have the opportunity for to meet the barrier for entry for a lot of these creative expressions that will enrich their lives. But like, okay, so to answer your initial question as like whether I think we've lost some of that, I think sure, because the influences on the reasons that people commit to projects have changed. The influences of whether you think you're going to make money by selling 1 million cheeseburgers like Ronald fucking McDonald, or you think I'm going to express myself at the highest level and find a way to keep the lights on just because, and like pay myself $0 because that's doing what I love.
But I also think it's not a binary like that.
It's
certainly
then
you have
there's a tremendous spectrum.
A million things in between, right?
I agree.
Not saying that you said it was a binary, but
no.
Yeah,
but I agree.
I love this as a thought exercise. Yeah, obviously the reasons that people are doing it, like I do think we're driven by like the high cost of living at this point. I mean, not that living has ever been cheap or easy, the great artists back in the day had to either be poor as fuck or have like a benefactor.
Correct. And in America we have a patronage problem. Everything has to be, it's like sponsored by Kia. It's like that, it's all like, okay, like we have a grant award that's like, I mean, I live in Florida. These guys are cutting arts funding like tooth and nail, and education funding. Like, America has patronage problems to the point that we have to look to corporate sponsorships, like if you want to make money to throw a party, no matter what city you're in, you have to get like a liquor sponsorship. It's the kind of thing where people used to throw parties on the beach and burn driftwood and howl at the moon like gibbons. Now it's like the motivation has shifted. the motivation has shifted. And I think I was literally just talking to a friend about this not long ago, about how, you know, even if we have a little bit of capital as artists, like, it's about community building. The motivation has to be about building community. And I don't mean that it has to be in like everybody else is wrong. Obviously, this is why I'm not very business minded, because I believe in people more than I believe in the almighty dollar. It's about what you worship. I don't know.
I think that the almighty dollar is a fallible thing. I mean, okay.
I agree.
But community is not. Whereas, like, we don't know what's going to happen with the money system moving forward. I have no fucking idea. This is a thing that human beings, like, came up with that is a representation. The gold standard's over. Like, this is a weird, like, representation of value that we have right now.
Correct.
But it's just a representation of value, whereas community is an actual tangible value, person to person, that has like a lot of value. For example, I have a relationship with you. You and I have a relationship. That means that you and I do each other favors, and you know, have done me many favors, including like providing me music at a very low cost or a very free cost for different, you know, projects that I've made. However, those projects have ended up benefiting you and benefiting me in different ways. And like,
of course,
those things have all these knock-on effects that are we can't see. So I love what you're saying, because I'm just like, yeah, here's the representation of that focus on community. And I believe that, like, we'll see what happens in the future, but I think the community that I've built with you has the potential to also benefit us financially in the future.
One can certainly only hope, and maybe this is colored by my experience as a musician, because music is also becoming more and more disposable every day. You know, music is this kind of funny thing where, because it's just air flying past your head, and since, like, you know, the mid 13th century, people have been like, how can I monopolize on that? It's like, it's this grotesque thing where we've reached a point where people just assume music should be free. And especially with AI, with all of these things, people just assume we've come full circle to sound just being an occurrence instead of a bespoke crafted thing. It's like, there's music just happening. There's peak saturation of music happening. There's never been more sound. Like, if you walk down a city street, if you walk down a city that's either coastal or inland or whatever, if you don't hear the harmonics of cars passing, and you don't hear, like, you know, things on the radio of like an open window, or you don't hear like a TV playing too loud at a bar, and think they're, you know, like, these are things that have happened elsewhere. It's the kind of, I don't know, it just, I think about this shit all the time, as far as like the accumulation of recorded media, which we're actively contributing to right now by recording a podcast.
Love it, which I love.
No, of course, but it's more about being, just feeling out of my element as someone who is crafting sound from nothing, who's like dreaming up the way things sound. It's not as much a matter of feeling like I'm doing a bad job or anything, or fighting up against anything. It's more just like literally like making your way above the noise. I hate to make like a corny metaphor, but that's what it is. Well, and also on top of,
you've done it. Well, you're one of my favorite audio creators. You're above the noise for me. I go to Pete first, which, you know, like, I'm
always grateful for our working relationship and our friendship. That's my point, is like, there's no quantifiable way to quantify any of these things, because like my relationship to whatever I consume is different than the person next to me. And I think this is the future. I think I believe, because it's the future that I'm living in currently, in terms of like the past, it was like, what is the Billboard music feeding me? Okay, I'm listening to that. Now I have so much access to so many different options, and my alignment goes towards like
people that I know, or creators, quote, I'm going to say creators, but like artists
Right.
that I value, and I'm going to listen to them first, and I'm going to go there first, because there's so much noise that they cut through easier in a way.
Absolutely. You make a good point, and I'm really glad that you brought up access, because it's never been easier to access music.
Yes.
That alone, like, it's never been easier to discover new music. It's never been easier to, like, I mean, I grew up in the 90s. I grew up when you had to go to a CD store.
Hey, me too.
And my old man, my father collected records. So it's the kind of thing where you used to have to buy a disc that contained the crucial data that was the air moving on that day that these guys sat down and recorded a thing.
Yes.
And you know, it really used to be a much more sacred practice and a much more intentional practice. But the double-edged sword, with all of the access, with the embarrassment of riches, comes an ocean of decay, because all of this data is just piling up and not really either not going anywhere or just contributing to the fact that it can make things that are meaningful more difficult to find.
Decay is amazing, because think about compost.
You're not wrong.
And how enriching it is, you know? Like, I just think like the world is, and it changes, and it's just, you know, we're going to see what happens.
No, you're
so hard to know.
You're certainly not wrong. And one of my favorite expressions is no mud, no lotus.
Oof, yes. Oh. Man, I love talking to you, Pete, because we always we do the traditional philosophy, I feel like, so well together, of like, let's look at this from all the angles.
Well, that, and also just like, I feel like I'm 100 years old and you're from the Midwest. So whenever I hit you with like a folksy
I'm not
expression,
from the
you're just like,
Midwest.
oh, you're not from the Midwest? Where the hell are you from?
I'm from
You're
Washington
Pacific
State.
Northwest?
Yes.
Okay. Forgive me for getting it right on the second try. Forgive me.
Well,
Forgive
I'm
me.
from an area that is one of the weirdest areas in the United States. There's like a nuclear plant. It's the desert. It's a very Republican red like area in Washington. So it's like it's an interesting and unique like that. So that's probably what you're feeling there.
Well, I think you are dialed into the down home thing. I mean, from what I know about like your family life and like you singing with your sisters, like that.
Oh yeah.
Like that alone is so goddamn wholesome. It's like printed out of a dream. It's unbelievable. But the reason I think about it is because I recently heard a great folksy expression that a friend of mine's like Irish grandfather hit me with, but Irish American, I should say. Everybody in America is not really where they're from. He hit me with the expression, it's not the cough that carries you off, it's the coffin they carry you off in.
What? I'm gonna need to think about that for 5 minutes. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah, I'll repeat that. It's not the cough that carries
Okay.
you off. It's the coffin they carry you off in.
Coffin that carry you off. Oh my Lord.
So,
well, that feels like a perfect note to move to your poem that you are going to read. That's going to go at the beginning.
sure enough. Let's do it.
Unless you have something else burning in your heart.
You know, I feel like we covered a lot of ground, and I'm grateful for it all. I
love you.
I love you too. I don't have any sort of any lingering thoughts. I'm drawing a total blank. I feel cleansed, truly.
Thank you for listening to The Ache. This podcast is produced by myself, Corrin Evans, and Alexis Murphy. All the music you hear is original compositions by my friend Peter Colombo. All other pertinent information will be linked in the show notes, and thank you for listening.